What's going on, guys? Welcome to the MuzzleBroke channel, and today we're installing the Duality Arms RATL-R Trigger for the Kriss Vector. There are a good handful of steps to this, but we're going to make it as quick and painless as we possibly can, so let's run it. First thing we're going to do is eject the mag and ensure the weapon is clear. We're then going to go ahead and separate the upper from the lower by punching out these 4 pins. Then these 2 components should separate, and we're going to go ahead and set the lower to the side because we do not need this for the rest of the install. Next, we're going to go ahead and remove these 2 safety selectors on each side of the gun, and these will just unscrew with an Allen wrench. Next, we'll go ahead and take out this ejection port by unscrewing these 2 on the other side of the gun. Then our ejection port here should just slide right out. Next, we're going to remove the top rail. On the front of the rail here, there's a little D10 pin that holds that together, so we're just going to grab a punch and bang that out. We'll make sure we don't lose the roll pin, and then this top rail should just slide off the front. Next, we're going to remove each 3 of these screws on the top so this trigger pack slides out. And after we remove that last screw, the trigger pack should just slide out like this. So once we have this trigger pack out, this is kind of where the bulk of the installation takes place once we bang out all these internal components. So as you can see, we have 4 roll pins here on the trigger group that we're going to have to carefully tap out to access the internals. Just be careful while doing this because some of these components are under tension, and if you're not paying attention, they'll shoot out and you'll lose them. So we're just going to work from left to right with our punch and our rubber mallet tapping these out. Now that was easy. So punching out this first roll pin frees the trigger, gives you 2 spacers, and this little spring as well. Moving our way over. Nothing popped out with that second roll pin, so we'll set it aside. Moving on to the third. So with that third roll pin, a spacer and our disconnector popped out. And onto the last roll pin to release our hammer. So with our 4th pin, we have the hammer as well as a spacer and spring. Okay, so once we've punched out all 4 of these roll pins, go ahead and take a look in the chassis. There were a couple of spacers that popped out after the fact, along with this little detent pin that was located right here in the chassis. So just go ahead, take all those out. Once we've popped out these pins, these are all of the pieces that we should have. Now we're gonna grab our trigger pack housing and remove these metal bars here. You should just be able to grab your needle nose pliers on and rip this out. So at this point, we have everything disassembled, and we're kind of ready to move on to some of our RATL-R components. And if you stuck with me this far, please subscribe to the MuzzleBroke channel. It helps me out an absolute ton, and I would really appreciate it. Now let's get to popping the RATL-R in. So right now, the only piece left in the trigger chassis is just this little safety lever mechanism. If you got the safety cam selector from Duality Arms, you do not have to mess with this shim, but if you just have the shim, this is how you install it. You're gonna go ahead and slide this shim right into this recess here by the safety cam, grab a small punch, and hammer it into place in this orientation so that it sits flush with this block here. And once that's hammered in, we can go ahead and unscrew this block from the safety cam and remove it. And if you have the safety cam from Duality Arms, don't worry about that shim, just take this whole piece out because we're going to replace it with this bad boy. And that block should pop out, and then this whole cam will pop out as well. So at this point, our next step is actually to install the RATL-R component of the trigger. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and take a punch and punch out this old sear that comes on your stock Vector trigger. So gonna go ahead, line this up, punch this bad boy out. So as you can see, this is gonna be a little bit stubborn, but this is supposed to be pretty tight in there, so we're just gonna keep on banging. Sweet. So once this roll pin is popped out, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the punch and remove that factory sear. Then we'll grab our RATL-R and placing it in this orientation, hammer that roll pin back in. So after that pin is flush on both sides, that is the complete assembly of the RATL-R sear. Next, we're gonna go ahead and grab our trigger pack and reassemble this. I'm gonna be using the safety cam from Duality Arms to give me that hard lock in a 3rd position. So we'll go ahead and start by sliding this in the back of the trigger pack. Again, if you do have the factory safety cam and the shim, you could also use it right here as well, but we're rocking this one. Next, we're gonna grab our trigger and our main spring here and feed this prong on the right-hand side through this hole first, as so. That we are in this orientation. Once we get this mainspring on here, Duality Arms actually recommends grabbing a little piece of pliers and grabbing both of these edges of the spring and pressing down so that that little curve touches that straight bar, just like that. And we'll go ahead and do that on both sides. This is just to tighten up the spring a little bit to give the trigger a little bit better function. Once we have that done, we're gonna go ahead and grab our trigger pack and insert the mainspring down in this orientation and then up and over. And these 2 hooks on the mainspring will actually recess in these 2 slots on our safety selector cam. So we should just be able to push this up and in. Just like that. So at this point, that's actually all of the install of the RATL-R disconnector and all the RATL-R components from Duality Arms. So all we're going to be doing is putting all of these pieces back in the trigger pack. Of course, that's a lot of steps, so we're going to walk you through how to do it. I'd recommend pausing the video at this point and get everything lined up in this orientation so we can go kind of step by step. I really hope I'm helping you out, so if you could help me out and subscribe to the MuzzleBroke channel, it means an absolute ton to me and I would really appreciate it. let's get this rocking. So we're gonna start with the two smaller dowels that go here and here. We're gonna go ahead and place those in just enough so that they stay in the chassis, but not too far because we have to put some other pieces in. We're gonna start with our smaller plastic spacer. You can see that these two holes are staggered just with these two pins. So we're gonna line it in just like that. And once that's lined up, we're gonna push these pins in a little bit to hold that spacer in place. Next, we're gonna address this sear, pushing this sear over into the correct orientation, and then push those pins through the sear as well. You might have to put a little bit of downward pressure on this sear to get these pins to line up, but then you should be able to get those pins through the spacer and the sear just like that. Next, we're gonna grab that last bigger spacer and place this in the trigger pack so the holes in the spacer are oriented with the holes in the chassis, just setting her in like this. So once we have that spacer in, we're gonna knock in the third pin here, but leave this second pin protruding because we got one more step. Next, we have to put our little detent and spring into this hole right here on the back of the chassis. That should just set in there for us. Just like that. Next, we're gonna take our disconnector. See that little outpouching here? That's actually gonna fit into a groove on the sear here. So we're gonna set it in this orientation, just like that. Depress down on that detent just a little bit, and this pin should snap right into place through the spacer, the sear, the disconnector, and the second spacer, just like that. Beautiful. At this point, just to kind of do a mild function check, you're gonna wanna go ahead and pull back on this trigger and look down, and you should see the sear and this disconnector cycling in this manner like this. So next, we're gonna grab this other big pin, starting from this side, insert it, insert one of our spacers, pin through that spacer. Next, we're gonna grab our hammer and spring in this orientation and slide it in and punch that pin through. Sometimes you gotta torque that hammer in the other direction a little bit just to get that pin to slam home, and just push down a little bit with your thumb to get her to slide in like that. Then we'll grab that last spacer, slide it in, and push that pin all the way through. Next, we're gonna grab our last pin, stick it through this rear hole here. Next goes the larger of the two spacers. So after we have this dowel pushed through that large spacer, we're gonna go ahead and push it through the trigger body. Next, we're gonna install this spring in this orientation on this side of the trigger. So we should be able to feed that through. Just press on that dowel a little bit. We have that in nicely. Last but not least, our final spacer on the outside. So we'll carefully slide that spacer in just like that. So at this point, we have everything installed, but we want to make sure this spring is installed correctly. The long leg of this spring right here should actually be resting right here in this orientation. If it's not, you might have under-rotated that spring with your install. So just knock that pin out and put that long leg a little bit more vertical so it could sit in this slot. Okay, so there's one final part left with this spring. We need to get this little piece that's pointed down alongside the trigger up and over that screw head right there. So what I'm gonna do is press this up with my finger as much as I can. I got this little hook tool, and I'm gonna see if I can't hook this in and around that screw head. Might be hard to see on camera, but it'll make a lot more sense when you're doing it. Okay, so I did have to do that off camera, so I apologize for that, but you can see now that little spring is actually sitting on top of that screw head in the correct orientation. I just did this with this little pick. I know there are some methods that you could actually use a small little string to pull that up and over that screw head. Whatever works best for you. I had pretty good luck with this pick. I just kind of had to get in there a little nitty gritty. So at this point, that is 100% complete. We are done, good to go, but let's do a quick function check. What we're gonna do is we're gonna clock this hammer back, should snap into place. Then while holding our hammer, because we don't want this to fly, slowly pull the trigger. Hammer should release. While keeping pressure on the trigger, we're gonna push that hammer back into that position, and then a slow release of the trigger here. You should hear and feel that disconnector click, just like that. And pull that trigger one more time. Hammer flies. We are good to go. We've installed it correctly. So once function checked, we're gonna go ahead and put this trigger pack back in the Vector. Same process we did to knock it all down, just in reverse. I'm kind of gonna speed run this part for the most part because it is fairly straightforward. We're gonna slide our trigger pack up and in the gun. Then we're gonna screw these top 3 screws back in. Next, I'm gonna pull this hammer back, put our ejector back in, flipper, screw her down. Next, I'm gonna go ahead and put on our safety selectors. It is important to note that we are screwing into that 3D printed polymer now, so don't over torque these screws, just use a bunch of Loctite. Hit the other side. So once those safety selectors on, we're gonna slide on our top rail. Should just slide on the front of the gun, as so. Gonna hammer this roll pin back in. We'll go ahead and put the upper and lower together, pop back in our 4 pins, and that's our entire install, but let's go ahead and function check this bad boy. But before you function check, please subscribe to the MuzzleBroke channel. It helps me out a ton, and I helped you out install this trigger, so it'd be awful nice of you. So we're gonna go ahead and rack this gun with the selector on safe. We're gonna pull the trigger, and it shouldn't go. Beautiful. We're gonna flip this over to the semi position, rack the gun, pull the trigger, we fire, then we'll flip her over to the Rattler mode, rack the gun, pull the trigger, and she fires as well. So there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the entire installation of the Rattler components to make this bad boy a little bit more fun to shoot. I've asked you before, but I'm gonna ask you one more time. Subscribe to the MuzzleBroke channel. I appreciate you. Don't miss the footage of this bad boy at the range. Thanks, y'all, and I will see you at the next MuzzleBroke video.